Hey everyone, today I'm going to take a look at Kubuntu, the latest iteration, which is 24.10. And this is a KDE incarnation of Ubuntu, thus the name Kubuntu. KDE is something I really haven't taken a look at in a while, and this video was inspired by Esra. Esra had made a comment there just during my last video and said, even though I'm a big KDE fan, this is yet another great Linux video. Well, thanks for that, Esra. And at the same time, I was inspired to do a KDE video because I haven't really given KDE a whole lot of attention lately, even though KDE was actually the very first environment that I ever messed with on my first Linux distro, which was way back in the probably Windows 98 days, maybe 95, I don't know. But it was a long time ago, and back then, when I downloaded my first distro, I think it might have been SUSE back then. I do remember looking back, it was a KDE distro, even though at the time I didn't know the difference. I didn't know there was a KDE or a GNOME. I had no clue. But I only found that out later, probably a year or two later, when I downloaded a different distro that was GNOME based. And I remember thinking, wow, this doesn't look nearly as good as the last one I downloaded. And then that was kind of the point where I discovered that there were a KDE and a GNOME. Then I instantly went back to finding a KDE based distro, and I was kind of KDE ever since. Whenever I messed with a Linux distro, I always gravitated towards KDE. Over the years, not so much, because for me, I like something lighter. I just really prefer the floating window managers now, and I ended up on XFCE before I did floating window managers because XFCE just seemed to be more stable overall. That's kind of where I ended up eventually. But anyway, I'm babbling. So let's continue on. This is the Kubuntu website here to my right. I think it's my right. Yep, that's my right hand, so it must be to my right. Anyway, I chose this because this is really a very stable distro, and I really like Kubuntu. So let's jump in here. I'm here at the live install ISO right now. I got it loaded in. So I'm going to just boot this in, and let's take a look at Kubuntu. I really like Kubuntu. In fact, I use Xubuntu, which is the XFCE spin of Ubuntu. And I use that because it makes a great base for my window manager, which is i3. And here we got Kubuntu. Our install screen is here, and we can either try it or install it. And I'm just going to go ahead and just get right into installing it. No need to explore the environment before we install it, because we're going to explore it anyway. So here you can see, looks like we got the Calamares installer here, which is different. It used to be the Ubiquity was kind of a Ubuntu thing, but I see they're kind of moving on to Calamares, which to me is an upgrade, a promotion. Nice. So here we got the American English, it looks like, by default. And so I'm just going to keep that and the New York time area. And then here we have our install mode. And I'm going to go with the full installation, I think. Might as well, since we're going to take a look at it anyways, might as well have everything. So that'll install everything that Kubuntu has to offer, including all the additional codecs and any proprietary drivers and so forth that we might need. So that's going to cover everything. I like that. And it's nice to have that choice. And I'm also going to erase the disk and just let it swap to a file. That's good. So I'll stick with the default there. I don't really want to encrypt it, so I'll just leave that unchecked, and then I'm going to hit next. And then here I'm going to give it a username and then a password. I'm going to leave the login automatically unchecked. And then I'm going to hit next. And then I think it's going to start installing. Okay, so here we got an overview of everything we did. And we're going to format the partition with the Linux. Actually, it's going to format the whole drive here. So very cool. We got the install started, and then it's going to just run through all these slides here to keep you entertained while it's doing its thing. But I'm going to pause it, and I'll be back when it's done. Okay, and it's all done. That didn't take too long at all to install. So we got restart now checked by default. So I'm going to just restart it now and see if it restarts. And so here we're back, and I see the grub menu. So it looks like everything worked out okay. So I'm just going to let it continue on here, and we should be seeing a boot screen here any second now. And here we are, so I'm just going to log in here, and you can see that it's Wayland by default. So I'm going to change that to X11 because Wayland usually gives me trouble. So I'm just going to stick with old reliable X11. I don't know what it is about my setup, but my system just does not like Wayland still. If it can't hack my system, in my opinion, it's not ready for prime time yet. So yes, that's my 2 cents. Although it really has no effect on what we'll see here for the review anyways on KDE. And here we are. We are in our desktop. And I'm just going to scooch up a little bit so we can see the widgets and everything. And here's our menu. And so this is, looks like it's using the, I forgot what they refer to this menu. There's 3 different styles here. And this is kind of like the standard default menu that I see on most distros, especially Ubuntu. And so here we got all our categories and development. It looks like we got a lot of things installed, so that's really nice. There's a bunch of games, Mahjong and Mines, some cool classics. And then here we got Krita under graphics, followed by Ocular, which is a nice viewer for PDFs. And I'm just going to let this updater run. This kind of popped up here off on the side, so I'm going to go ahead and authenticate that and just let it kind of run on the side there and do its thing. That's always a good idea to do that first before you do anything else after an install. Okay, the updates are all run, so I just restarted the computer here just for good measure. And now let's explore a little bit. I opened up Dolphin here so we can have that on the side because I'm going to change our theming here in a little bit. So if we go into settings, here we got our system settings and so forth. We also got our system categories here. So we got all kinds of handy tools in here like the KDE Partition Manager, which I really like. And that's also where you can find the console, my favorite all around. We got FTTIX, which is great for bilingual if you need Chinese characters or some other type of characters, Russian or Arabic or something. Then there's our Welcome Center and then our help. So this is a nice little reference here. If you click help, you have a menu over here on the left-hand side that gives you all kinds of great access to probably anything you need to know about KDE and Kubuntu. So that's always handy to keep in mind. It's something that's, I think, often overlooked by a lot of users. I just wanted to point that out. And of course, we have our all applications, which are alphabetically listed, and then our favorites menu, so you can add things to your favorites if you want to just have things you want to access all the time from the menu. And this is Firefox, so I'm just going to take a look at that real quick and just see if we got the latest, which I think we probably do. So here we got all our beginning stuff for customization and all that. So just going to skip it all and let's take a look at the version. So if we come over here to help and about, we got 133.0.3, so looks pretty latest and greatest to me, give or take a great or late. So excellent. And I think this is probably the snap version of Firefox. If I remember right, typically Firefox installs from the snap when it comes to Ubuntu. But if for some reason you don't like a snap, snaps are fine with me. But if you have a problem with it, then you can always uninstall it and then just go out to the Firefox website and install it directly from the website and you're good to go. So here's some different themings if you want to like change the theme on your Firefox. I just changed mine there to that Grennan dark kind of thingy there. So that was cool. I like it. So that's Firefox looking good. Let's pop over here and take a look at our system settings. Let's start out with just kind of messing with the theming here. One thing I really love about KDE is you can make it look any way you want it. It's practically endless when it comes to theming. So here's our Breeze Dark. And it even changes the wallpaper. It's essentially the same picture, but it's like a dark version of the same picture. So that's kind of cool. I think they got inspired by GNOME because I think GNOME did that. And then shortly afterwards, you saw it on KDE. One of the few things that GNOME did first that was kind of cool. Anyway, if you want to tweak your theming even more, here we got our wallpapers. And so you can change your background by choosing some of these wallpapers. It's got a bunch of default KDE wallpapers and also Ubuntu branded stuff. There's a Kubuntu branded paper there. So yeah, a lot of nice looking wallpapers. I actually like the default wallpaper that's on here right now, but it's nice to be able to scroll down here and see a lot of different choices. And I am liking the choices. There's a lot of really cool wallpapers in here. And moving on, under the global themes, we got colors. Let's take a look at colors next. So if we click in here, we can change the highlighting and so forth in our system here. And here we got all these different colors. We can use customized colors if we want. So right now it's pulling the accent colors from the current theme, but here we can pull it from the wallpaper, which is nice. And then these are our custom, and by default, it's got that magenta kind of look, and then we got orange and green, purple, darker purple, or the other one might be more like a plum, maybe. Here we can do like a hot pink, which is kind of cool looking, or maybe that's more of a true magenta. Hard to say, give or take. And then again, this is the accent from the color scheme itself. I kind of like the one from the wallpaper. That looks pretty cool. I could go with that. I think I will. So cool. And so I'm going to apply that. And then here we got our nightlight settings. That's kind of cool. You can use the nightlight, and you can actually use that any time of the day if you wish, and not just at night. So it does give you an option for that. And the cool thing about nightlight is you can kind of filter out some of the blue light, at least theoretically. I never used a spectrometer to test the accuracy of that claim there, but yeah, you can back off the blue light, get into some of the other spectrums there, which is more appropriate for nighttime and early morning and so forth. And I guess that's actually healthier for your eyes too, because there's certain types of light that's good for you that helps generate some essential things like melatonin and all that. So yeah, not too up on all the technicals, but a light can have a pretty profound effect on a person's health. So here we got a highlight temperature, and you can see the graphic up there changing as you run it, but I don't really see it changing on the outside. Maybe it's because of the driver I got here running inside a VM, so that may have something to do with it. But overall, I kind of like these nightlight things. KDE has done a really nice job here. But hitting apply, yeah, I'm not seeing the actual change beyond the indicator up there, but I'm pretty sure if you pop it on your computer, you probably will see it. Because I know actually KDE 6, I think this is like 6.1 something. We'll be getting to that pretty soon when we get to the about, or if I do like a NeoFetch or a FastFetch. When they first changed over to 6 there, it was pretty much unusable from my experience, but they actually snapped out of it pretty quick. Here we have our Windows decorations. So up on top, you see the window decorations up there, and here's where you can change the style and so forth. So if we click on apply, now you can see the style is changed to the plastic. Then we have our oxygen style. And not only did it change the decorations on top, but also gave some highlighting around the frame, which I kind of like that. That's cool. I might keep that glow, actually. So I'm going to go with that, I think. Nice. And then here we have some system settings for oxygen, animation, shadows, and all that. And here you can change the highlight color if you want something other than the bluish highlight. Myself, I like the bluish, so I'm going to stick with that. And then you can even put in some Windows-specific parameters there. And then here we have our icons. So by default, we're using Breeze Dark. And from what I'm seeing up here, that's probably my favorite overall. But here we also have our other variations, our Ubuntu type icons that are also available. Dolphin doesn't really update these very well, at least in this environment. So usually I got to close that and open it, but it seemed like they kind of changed when I arrowed over them. But I'm going to go back to Breeze Dark, and they're not changing back now. So I'm just going to close this and then open it again. And then they should be back to the Breeze Dark icons. And there they are with the purple highlighting, like we changed it there, taken from the wallpaper colors, which is nice. And then here we have our different cursors. So if you want a different kind of cursor rather than the standard one, you can select from them here. And as you arrow over each of the different types of cursors, you can see that the cursor changes. So you can see the style that you'll be changing to, including the animations that go with it. So that's really nice. That's another nice feature I like with KDE. And then here we got our system sounds. So you can change your different default sounds here if you like your ocean and oxygen, free desktop, and so forth. And down here we got our sound bar. And I'm just going to open that up and see if I can hear anything. And I can't, probably because in this particular setup, I don't really have any sound drivers installed. Oh well, not a thing. But anyway, this is where you can change your different sounds for your environment. And then if we move on over to our next item, we got our splash screens. So this is what we saw when we first logged in. We saw the dark breeze screen. The oxygen one, I actually kind of like that one a little better. So that would kind of be my choice. And you can hit this little play button and get a preview of what it looks like when you log in. So when you're logging in, this is what you would see if you changed to the oxygen theme. And I do like that one better. So I'm just going to kind of go with that one, I think. It just kind of looks cooler. And you can also click on other and pick some custom ones off the internet. Nice. And then this is our login screen setup here. So by default, I think we're using the breeze one here. And that's where you see the background with the tree and all that. So that's kind of cool. And if you want to change it, just authenticate in here and you can change it. And then here we got our boot splash screen. Nice. So you can even change that along with the spinner and everything else. So you can get really, you can dial down on many levels with KDE, which to me is one of their big strong points. Here we have our window behavior, and here we got our desktop effects. That's kind of an area where you can have lots of fun. So you can go in here, and that's like a color blindness correction. So that kind of changes the dynamics of the color there, which is kind of cool. To me, it actually looks less vivid, but I guess somehow if you're colorblind, then it must look more colorful, apparently. That's kind of interesting. If I turn that off and hit apply, then our reds and other colors are back. So that's kind of interesting. I guess you have to be the kind of human that can switch between color blindness and not being colorblind to appreciate the difference. But I'm sure it helps. That's really cool. Never noticed that feature before. And then here we got our other cool things like our background contrast. So apparently that can make the contrast more distinct if you're having trouble seeing your open windows from the background. I'm not noticing too much difference there. So maybe that's kind of a subtle thing or something that's relevant under certain conditions. Then we have our fall apart effect. I like that effect. I like when you close a window, it breaks it apart. Kind of like this. Cool. I like it. I think I'll keep that. That's kind of one of my favorites there on the effects, along with the wobbly windows, of course, which is in the list as well. And so just lots of nice effects. Of course, you want to keep in mind that the more effects you use, the more resources it uses. So if you have a slow potato of a computer, you want to be careful on how many resources you use. And there's a bit of wobbliness, but it's not much. So if I go in the settings here, I can increase the level a bit and hit apply. And now when I wobble, you get a much better effect. Nice. I like it. That seems wobbly enough for me. And then we have our window rules and our KWin scripts. And these can be handy if you have some special needs that you want to address. You can do that through these scripts, and you can also download them through the extras button there as well. Then we have our activities, general behavior, and the workspace. Most of your typical KDE settings that you find on all the KDE distros here. Clicking files and folders by default would be a double click, which selects them, and then opens them means it's a single click. And then here we have our screen locking. So I typically turn off screen locking because for me it's annoying. But if you're in an environment with a lot of other people and you don't want them nosing around in your computer, screen locking can be pretty handy. And then we got our user feedback about driver manager, which makes installing drivers pretty easy if you don't have any. And then we got our auto start, so you can add apps to auto start if you wish. And then our desktop session settings. And the break apart effect when we close it. Nice. Now I right clicked here and I am going to enter into edit mode here. And let's poke around on our system here, on our panel and so forth. There's our display configuration, global themes. Those are kind of things we were in already, wallpaper, but here's add widgets. So if we want to add a widget, we can go in here, and back on my last review when KDE first went to version 6, pretty much none of these widgets worked because they weren't compatible with the Qt, aka Qt 6 framework. But I think they're probably all caught up now. I think even the weather widget didn't work back then, or it might have been the only one that did work. I can't remember, but it was kind of rough. But the weather widget is kind of a favorite of mine. I like that one. So I'm going to drag it down. If you put it in the taskbar, the last I knew, the temperature doesn't show up even if you activate it. But if you have it on the desktop, the temperature will display there. But for some reason, they've never figured out how to make it work in the taskbar. And I doubt they have now, but I'll check anyway. So I'm going to just type in a location here. And then let's just click that and hit apply. Okay, the break apart. And there's the weather. Nice. And we can just drag that into the taskbar if you want to have it in the taskbar. Otherwise, it can reside on the desktop. And I'm not sure where I drag that. I think it's down in the right corner there. Looks like I have two instances here. Okay, interesting. Well, that's all right. I'll just go ahead and go to this one. And you can see that it's showing everything. That's pretty cool. I really like the graphics in it. So if I right click on it and configure, you can set the different settings, how long it checks, but mainly the appearance here. You can show the temperature and apply, and it still doesn't work in the taskbar, so I'm not really shocked by that, but they do have another alternative widget you can download through the widgets area, and I forgot what it's called. I think it's Weather 2 or something, but the mouse over does work, so that's kind of a nice little consolation prize, I suppose. At least for the location it works. And then you can also set it to be over the weather icon, but also that one doesn't work either. That's all right. But like I said, if you have it residing on your desktop instead of the taskbar, it does work. I'm not sure why they've never been able to figure that out, especially when other people have come up with widgets that work just fine, but not a big deal. I guess I'm a little anal. So yes, the weather widget. And then there's our nightlight. These are our different other items here on the taskbar, our networks. And then we have our extra icons that you can access that are not displaying there. And then our speaker, our analog output and all that. Then over here we have our language settings on the keyboard. That's part of the FCTIX, whatever they call it. And then our panel settings here. So you can set your configuration pretty easily from that little applet. And I'm going to take this and just kind of drag it. And I think I lost my weather widget. I don't know where I put it. Maybe because we're in this edit mode here, it's probably just behind it. I'm guessing it's probably on the desktop, but you can align your panel here. You can also get the default look. On a lot of KDE versions, they have the panel floating. And so you can set that here as well. In Kubuntu, they have it in a fully wide mode like this, which I like. I'm good with that. But they also do have a floating setting as well. So here we got our alternatives. So if you right click on the application launcher icon, you can see that we have our application dashboard. You can change the style. So if I select that, it didn't change. Well, let's try that again. Select. And that's weird. It used to change when you selected that. Let's go alternatives. Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong there. So maybe it's just me, or maybe it quit working. Show alternatives. Let's try something else like the application dashboard. Oh, I don't think I clicked dashboard. Nope, that's not it. Okay. For a minute there, I thought it was just because I was selecting the same one. So I don't know why that's not working. That's kind of unusual for an Ubuntu-based distro because that should work. And I very rarely ever run into anything, especially in Kubuntu, that wouldn't work. Let's go into our edit mode here and then try it from edit mode. Let's go show alternatives and then maybe select dashboard again. See if it works from here. Maybe that's what I'm doing wrong. Now if I get out of edit mode, let's exit out of there. Let's see if it saved it. And it did. Okay, so that must be the key, the secret. Got to be in edit mode. I don't remember having to do that before. I think I could just change it without being in there, but it seems like for some reason you got to be in edit mode now, but that's okay with me. As long as I know what to do, I'm good, I guess. But yeah, that is something that is different though. I'm pretty sure I didn't have to be in edit mode before to change the style of the alternative launchers there. Here we got our different settings here for Dolphin. If I go into configure Dolphin, I usually jump in here and just kind of like to poke around a bit typically. But if you got to change anything, this is the place to do it. I really like the Dolphin default settings though, so I rarely ever find myself having to change anything. Back in the day when they had a single click by default, I would have to go in here and change it back. So that's where you find the settings. And this is kind of cool. So I just click select all through double click in those settings, and I like that. That's very cool. I just noticed that that setting existed. So double click here in a blank area, and then you can select, it'll select all the folders. That's very cool. So if I wanted to select everything except maybe one, I could double click in the background, hold my control key down and unselect a couple, and do my thing with the rest, like toss in the trash, or copy, or move somewhere. Very cool. And these are our different views here. So we got a list view and then a tree view here. So that allows us to view our folders and subfolders in a tree view. And then our list view, and then back to our default icon view. So that's really nice to have. Typically I use the list view myself when I'm out there using file managers, but occasionally I like the icon views, and of course in the Dolphin settings you can customize it. And that was a split panel, so that's a nice feature too. I like having the split panel so you can work between two folders. It's a little bit of an alternative to using the tab, which is Control T, and that'll make a new tab within the folder, within the file viewer, but the split is kind of like a shortcut. And one other thing, I think I want to go down here and take a look at LibreOffice. I believe that's our default Office suite. So back in our dashboard here, under our Office category, I'm just going to open up Calc real quick. Just want to see how the theming is holding up since I switched to dark theme. And if I know my Kubuntu, it probably looks great. And it does, so I don't have to change anything. On a lot of distros, you have to change the theming up here on the bar, on the toolbar, in LibreOffice, especially Calc, when you change a theme. So if it's light by default and you change it to dark, usually it stays light in LibreOffice on a lot of distros, but Kubuntu's got it covered. Excellent. And then here's our Discover Software Center, so I thought I'd just open that up. Me personally, I like just installing it through the console because it's a lot quicker, but if you like the GUI type thing, it's a lot prettier. You can go in here and you can find software. VLC is a recommended media player, and that's one that I use. That's kind of a staple for me because not only does it give me a great media player to play, but it also provides all the codecs and everything else you need for your setup for other things beyond and above VLC. So I'm just going to authenticate here, and I'm going to let that install. And it gave me a choice to choose from the Ubuntu repository or a snap. And I'm going to stick with Ubuntu. I prefer installing from the repos. I'd rather have the repo in most cases, unless the snap's newer, then of course I'll probably go with that. But here's the way I like to install. So I'm going to do a sudo apt install Inkscape and then just authenticate there. And so this is how you can install from the terminal on Kubuntu. And the console for me is just quicker, and I know what I'm looking for anyway, so I'm just really more comfortable here. I can get it quickly. I don't have to go scrolling through menus and hitting the search and all that to get to something just so I can install it. If you want to explore and just have a graphical overview of all the great stuff, Discover is really a fantastic package manager to use. I really like the way it's set up on here. Looks great. There's music score, WinFF. So these are a lot of audio and video editors here. There's Kden Live. A lot of people love using Kden Live. Personally, I use Shotcut. I think it's actually a little bit better overall, even though Kden Live does have a couple features that I really like. Shotcut, for me, just really checks all the boxes, and it's fast. and I never have trouble with it. It's stable. So that's another big deal for me. If you want to do a search for something, you can do that as well. And so I just put Blender in there, but I guess I got to be home. I apparently was still in the audio category. So if I do Blender in the home category, it should search everything. And there we go. So here we got Blender, and they also have the snap versions there. So they kind of sort them out for you, which is nice. And again, I would probably go with the repo version personally, but it really doesn't matter. That's just personal taste. You're not hurting anything by going with snap. So cool. And there's Inkscape, so I just did a quick search for that. I typed it in. If I do the same thing for VLC, there it is. Nice. And it launched VLC just fine, and that looks like the latest there, 3.0.21. Great. VLC player. My favorite overall media player. So yes. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to look for FastFetch. That actually was something pointed out by Albany1 in my last video in the comments. So I appreciate that, Albany1. Hope I pronounced that right, by the way. But yes, he pointed out that FastFetch is actually the latest incarnation of NeoFetch, because apparently NeoFetch is no longer supported. I didn't really know that FastFetch apparently is like the newest fork of NeoFetch. So that's the way to go. And thank you again. I appreciate that. So because of that, I'm going to install that instead of NeoFetch. So I'm going to do a sudo apt install FastFetch and hit enter. And there it is. So I'll just hit yes to that, or enter. Yes is default. And there we go. So now we should have FastFetch. I'm just going to type that in, and it should kind of look like NeoFetch. And there it is. Wow, that's bigger than the console. Or is it? So let's widen that up a bit, and beautiful. I'm liking it. So here it's showing our latest version of Kubuntu Oracular 24.10 with the 6.11 kernel, running Bash 5.2.32 with KDE Plasma 6.1.5. So it's come a long way since the last time I reviewed it. They've been making real fast progress here on the KDE, which they had to anyway, because it was pretty rough before. But also, it's a testament to how good the KDE team really is. And there we go. FastFetch. A little bit of info on our KDE install. And I think that's going to kind of cover that. And I'm just going to float back down to the bottom here. There we go. I don't know why, but I'm just more comfortable down here. I was getting kind of dizzy way up there. So anyways, I think it's time for my 2 cents. And I got to tell you, Kubuntu has not disappointed me. It still is probably my go-to distro when it comes to running anything KDE, because I know I'm going to get a lot of stability out of KDE with the Ubuntu platform in the background. I think Kubuntu really does a fantastic job anyway, integrating KDE and having stability issues almost non-existent here. And if I were a full-time KDE user, Kubuntu would probably be my distro of choice, 100%. I think I'd have to go with that for sure. That's kind of my 2 cents on it. I have run KDE on a lot of different types of distros with different package managers. I've run it on Arch and OpenSUSE, of course, which is another favorite of mine for KDE. I think OpenSUSE is a natural fit. Maybe because when I was talking at the beginning of the video, talking about when I did my first distro and used SUSE back then before OpenSUSE existed, it was KDE, I believe, was my original thing there with SUSE. So yeah, I kind of got a connection with the past there with OpenSUSE and KDE. So that's my other favorite environment or distro for KDE. But aside from all that, I'm really liking the difference I'm seeing now than a few months ago when I did my review on KDE 6, when it was just 6 and newly come over. And of course, back then I was expecting there to be hiccups and glitches because it was such a big transition from 5 to 6. I got through my review okay when it was at 6, but when I actually tried to use it on a daily driver and test it for a week, it wasn't even usable. It lasted about a day and I had to get out of it. So in contrast, it's really come a long, long way. I've been playing with KDE on some hardware as well, and I gotta say, it's been working well for me, except for the Wayland. If I go into Wayland, I still have some issues there, but Wayland and me just aren't ready for each other yet. So I don't really mess with Wayland too much. I do run Hyperland a bit on the side, and overall I like Hyperland a lot. It's just that the Wayland, again, kind of gives me trouble, especially if I go into a VM. I get trapped in there, and that's with Vert Manager. The little applet doesn't allow me to get out of it if I'm in full screen. And so my only way out is to shut down the VM or the computer if the VM freezes. So yeah, that's not good. So Wayland for me is just not ready for prime time. If I were to run KDE as a daily driver, I would still stay in the X11 session when I log in instead of the Wayland. But again, that's me. There's a lot of people out there that say they run Wayland and have zero issues at all. I think it really depends on what you do on the PC. There's just certain things that some people do that are not Wayland friendly, and then there's other things that people do every day that are Wayland friendly and never perceive of any problems at all. So there you go. With Kubuntu and the newest version here of KDE, I think it's the newest version, I absolutely recommend this. This is something I think is good for production, and if you want to use something and daily drive it for your everyday use, I think this would be just great. And again, I think the marriage of KDE and Ubuntu, aka Kubuntu, is really a super fine distro. I give it an A+, 5 stars. Maybe even, dare I do it, 2 thumbs up. All right. So anyways, I think that's about all the 2 cents that I have for this. And again, I hope this was all helpful. And thank you again, Ezra, for inspiring me on doing a KDE review here. I appreciate that. And with that, I hope this review was helpful. And if it was, don't forget to leave that double thumbs up. And hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.